The Europe we picture today, a beacon of enlightenment, human rights, and democracy, isn't quite the reality on the ground. While it stands as the birthplace of these ideals, there are still hidden barriers that quietly exclude Muslims. With over 740 million people, Europe is a patchwork of cultures, languages, and beliefs. For Catholics, this might seem like a reassuring stronghold. Over 70% of Europeans identify as Christian. But for Muslims, who make up nearly 37 million, or 5% of the population, the question remains, how does a continent so rooted in diversity still struggle to embrace all of its faiths? In a continent that prides itself on freedom and inclusion, why are there still countries where Muslims remain unwelcome? This isn't about overt discrimination or legal bans. No, the reality is more complex and far-reaching. 10. Slovakia, the Watchtower Nation. Tucked away in the heart of Europe, Slovakia stands as a silent fortress against the spread of Islam. With a population of around 5.5 million, this predominantly Catholic nation has gone to extraordinary lengths to protect its religious identity. Slovakia became the first European country to ban the official recognition of Islam, setting the stage for its rigid stance. In 2016, a law was passed requiring any religion to have at least 50,000 adherents to gain state recognition. With fewer than 5,000 Muslims living in Slovakia, Islam didn't stand a chance. Fast forward to today and not a single mosque exists within the country's borders. This stark reality has left many questioning Slovakia's commitment to religious freedom. The government claims these measures are necessary for national security and cultural preservation. But is there more beneath the surface? Over 60% of Slovaks believe Islam is incompatible with their culture, a belief that has shaped policies preventing Muslims not only from practicing their faith, but even from entering the country. What does this mean for Slovakia's place in a rapidly diversifying Europe? And if you thought Slovakia's stance was extreme, just wait until you see what's happening in the next country we're about to share. 9. Latvia, the hidden barrier. On the shores of the Baltic Sea lies Latvia, a nation often left out of conversations about religious freedom. But today, Latvia stands out as one of the most unwelcoming countries for Muslims. With fewer than 2 million people and a Muslim population of less than 1%, why is such a small group met with such intense resistance? Over the years, Latvia has enacted laws that essentially prevent Muslims from gaining citizenship. The government claims it's about preserving the Latvian way of life, but that phrase barely masks the deeper fear of cultural erosion. The reality? Muslims aren't just marginalized, they're actively excluded. The construction of mosques is heavily restricted and Islamic practices are met with suspicion or outright hostility. Did you know that right now Latvia reported the highest rate of hate crimes against Muslims in the Baltic region? With over 75% of Latvians expressing concerns about the influence of Islam, it's no surprise the government has embraced such harsh measures. But what does this mean for Latvia's standing within the European Union, a body built on the pillars of human rights? Latvia's exclusion is stark, but what's happening in the next country we're about to share is another level entirely. But before we move on, if you're enjoying this content, please consider subscribing to our channel so you don't miss any new content, faith-based content. Now back to our list. 8. Hungary, Europe's fortress of resistance. Hungary, once a crossroads of cultures in Central Europe, has transformed into a fortress under Viktor Orban's leadership, synonymous with staunch anti-Muslim sentiment. Since 2015, Hungary has taken an increasingly hardline approach to Muslim immigration. With a population of nearly 10 million, the country is predominantly Christian, and its government has made it clear that it intends to stay that way. Did you know Hungary now enforces some of the strictest immigration policies in Europe? Muslims in particular face immense hurdles, from restrictive visas to outright bans. The Hungarian government justifies these measures as essential for protecting national security and preserving Hungary's cultural identity. But what's the real story behind these actions? Over 70% of Hungarians support Orban's anti-Muslim policies, which has empowered him to enact sweeping laws that all but shut the country's doors to Muslims. The construction of mosques is outright banned, and Islamic organizations are closely monitored under the guise of national security. But this isn't just about immigration. These policies reflect a deeper cultural battle about Hungary's future. As Hungary tightens its grip on exclusionary policies, many are left wondering what this means for its standing in the European Union. After all, the EU is founded on principles of religious freedom and inclusion, values that Hungary seems increasingly at odds with. Hungary's fierce resistance may be startling, but it pales in comparison to what's happening in the next nation we're about to cover. Get ready to explore a country where the exclusion of Muslims has been taken to an entirely different level. Poland, the stronghold of Catholic tradition. Imagine a country where faith and national identity are so deeply intertwined that any outside influence is met with strong resistance. Welcome to Poland, a nation where Catholicism isn't just a religion, it's a defining feature of the national psyche. With nearly 38 million citizens, over 85% of whom identify as Catholic, Poland has taken extraordinary measures to keep Islam from gaining any foothold within its borders. But why has this led to such an overwhelming resistance to Muslims? Right now, Poland stands out as one of the few European nations with virtually no Muslim immigration. The numbers are stark. Less than 0.1% of Poland's population is Muslim. This isn't just by chance, it's by design. The government has implemented strict immigration policies that make it nearly impossible for Muslims to settle in the country. In addition, a lack of legal recognition for Islam as a religion has left Muslims not only marginalized but almost invisible in Polish society. Poland's resistance is driven largely by a desire to preserve its Catholic heritage. But the question remains, is this really about protecting faith, or is it about something deeper, rooted in fear? Recent surveys reveal that over 80% of Poles believe Islam poses a threat to their way of life, a belief that has fueled exclusionary policies and raised significant questions about Poland's commitment to European values of freedom and inclusivity. As Poland continues to isolate itself from the rise of Islam in Europe, it begs the question, how long can a nation hold on to such rigid barriers in an increasingly interconnected world? If Poland's policies are shocking, wait until you discover what's happening in the next country we're covering, where history and fear have combined to create a country at odds with its own diverse past. Bulgaria, a nation shaped by fear and history. Bulgaria, with its deep historical ties to the Ottoman Empire, has a relationship with Islam that's as complicated as it is tense. Though Muslims make up around 10% of its population, a remnant of the country's Ottoman past, Bulgaria right now is actively working to curb the influence of Islam, particularly among its growing immigrant population. Did you know that Bulgaria enforces some of the most restrictive laws on religious expression in all of Europe? The government has gone as far as banning certain religious garments and severely limiting the construction of mosques. These measures are presented as necessary for national security and maintaining social cohesion. But are they really about protecting the nation, or are they rooted in something more complex? Much of Bulgaria's approach is driven by a lingering fear, one that harks back to the Ottoman era. Political leaders have stoked this fear, encouraging a view that Islam poses a threat to the country's identity and future. Surveys reveal that nearly 65% of Bulgarians view Islam with suspicion, a sentiment that has fueled policies designed to marginalize Muslims, especially those from immigrant backgrounds. In a country home to one of the largest Muslim populations in Europe, Bulgaria's actions raise serious questions about its place in an increasingly multicultural continent. What does this mean for Bulgaria's future as it navigates this delicate balance between past and present? And if you think Bulgaria's story is steeped in tension, wait until you see what's happening in the next country on our list. It will leave you questioning Europe's broader commitment to religious freedom. Greece, struggle between tension and modernity. Greece, the birthplace of Western civilization, has a long and complicated relationship with Islam. Though Muslims make up around 5% of the population, Greece remains one of the few European countries with a significant Muslim minority that still lacks a fully functioning mosque in its capital, Athens, even after decades of promises from the government. The Greek government has been slow to acknowledge the rights of its Muslim citizens, particularly in the wake of the refugee crisis. Why is this the case? The answer lies in Greece's national identity, which is closely linked to Orthodox Christianity. The idea of building mosques has faced strong opposition from both the public and political leaders. Surveys show that over 70% of Greeks believe Islam is incompatible with their culture, fueling policies that restrict Islamic practices. The government's hesitancy to allow the construction of mosques in Athens is a glaring example of this ongoing tension. What impact will this exclusion have on Greece, a country that sits at the crossroads of East and West, as it moves forward? Denmark, widely recognized for its progressive values, might seem like an unexpected entry on this list. However, the country has adopted some of the most restrictive immigration policies in Europe, particularly aimed at Muslims. With a population of around 5.8 million, Denmark is predominantly Lutheran, and only about 5% of its citizens identify as Muslim. Did you know that Denmark banned face-covering veils in public back in 2018? That law was just the start. By 2024, the Danish government had introduced even tougher measures to curtail Muslim immigration and limit integration. But what's driving these decisions? The government claims these actions are necessary to maintain social cohesion and uphold Danish values. But is this truly about preserving cultural identity, or does it stem from a deeper fear of the unknown? Surveys reveal that over 60% of Danes believe Islam poses a threat to their way of life, a sentiment that's been reflected in increasingly restrictive policies. So, what does this say about Denmark's standing as a champion of human rights on the global stage? Italy, a nation in the grip of tradition. Italy, a country renowned for its rich history and deep Catholic heritage, is grappling with an internal battle over its identity. Despite having a population of nearly 60 million, including a Muslim minority of about 2.5 million, Italy still lacks a national framework for officially recognizing Islam as a religion. Surprising, right? The Italian government has been hesitant to extend the same rights to Muslims as it does to other religious groups. Why? The answer lies in the nation's identity, which is deeply intertwined with Catholicism. Proposals to build mosques or recognize Islamic holidays have been met with strong resistance from both the public and political leaders. Surveys show that over 60% of Italians believe Islam is incompatible with Italian culture, fueling policies that restrict Muslim immigration and integration. This refusal to recognize Islam on the same level as other faiths has resulted in a lack of official mosques and an ongoing atmosphere of exclusion. But with Europe becoming increasingly diverse, can Italy continue to uphold these rigid policies? And if you think Italy's identity struggle is intense, wait until you see what's happening in the next country on the list. Things get even more complicated. Switzerland, the hidden fortress. Switzerland, known worldwide for its neutrality and strong commitment to human rights, harbors a surprising and quiet resistance. Beneath its peaceful exterior, the nation has drawn a hard line against Islam. With a population of 8.5 million, Muslims make up just 5% of the populace, yet Switzerland continues to uphold a nationwide ban on the construction of minarets. Yes, you read that right. A country often praised for its democratic values has enforced this ban since 2009, following a highly controversial referendum. The government defends the ban as the will of the people, claiming it's necessary to preserve Switzerland's cultural landscape. But is that the whole story? This ban is only the tip of the iceberg in a country where Islam has been met with growing unease. More than 60% of Swiss citizens express concerns about the influence of Islam, which has paved the way for increased restrictions on Muslim religious practices. New mosque construction is tightly regulated, and public expressions of Islamic faith are often viewed with suspicion. For a nation that prides itself on democracy and human rights, what does this say about Switzerland's real stance on religious freedom? If you think Switzerland's hidden fortress of resistance is unexpected, wait until you see what's happening in the next country, where the line between culture and exclusion becomes even more blurred. France, banishing secularism. France, famous for its deep-rooted commitment to secularism, has a complex and often tense relationship with Islam. Home to Europe's largest Muslim population, around 6 million people, France has implemented some of the most stringent laws against public expressions of Islamic faith. The French government justifies these policies in the name of secularism, aiming to keep religion out of public life to promote equality and social cohesion. But is that the full picture? Since the early 2000s, France has steadily ramped up restrictions on Islamic practices. The ban on religious symbols, including hijabs in schools and public buildings, remains one of the most hotly debated policies. With more than 70% of French citizens believing Islam is incompatible with the nation's values, anti-Muslim sentiment has grown, resulting in mosque closures and increased scrutiny of Islamic organizations. As France continues to navigate this contentious relationship, many wonder where the line will be drawn between secularism and exclusion. So what are the effects of these policies? For Muslims in France, practicing their faith has become a daily struggle. It begs the question, can the country genuinely integrate its Muslim community? And with that, the final country on this list brings us to a close. Share your thoughts in the comments. If you found this video insightful, be sure to hit that like button, share it with friends, and subscribe for more content. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you in the next video.